more for you, you feel it. You know it. This is your life, and it's time to go from contender to champion. This is the show. John Madsen.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is the show. Guys, today I am pumped to have one of my good friends, one of my mentors, a person that I've spent a lot of time with over this past year, and a person that is truly one of the people I consider to be a huge mentor in my life, and somebody who's had profound impact on my life in so many ways. Relationship, even in fitness, believe it or not, and we can get into that, but business 100%, just really the best way I can describe it is helped me unlock this thing that I knew was there, where it almost felt like a lot of times that I had one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, and I could tap into this greatness 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time it was like I was stuck and I was keeping myself stuck. There was some self-deserve, which I want to get into, issues that I had to work through, but truly, if you guys want to know how to rewire your brain to bring you incredible results, whether that be fitness or business or even with your wife or husband, do not miss this episode. So first, I want to introduce my friend, William Lam. Thank you so much. You are in studio, so we're face to face here. And man, just if you could tell my listeners like what you do specifically in the most simple form, what would you say?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am very grateful for your super kind introduction. I'm honored, and I truly feel that because getting to work with and coach one of the greatest people on earth is definitely an honor. And I
Thank you.
Sometimes get up in the morning, I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad. And because I get a text from John and I'm like, whoa, he's doing well. This is awesome. So I feel a tremendous level of gratitude. So I'm honored to be here. I will say this, if simply put, what we do can be expressed in a sentence, I would say we help people completely rewire their brain so that they can have whatever they want. That would be the simplest way to put it, because that our brain, our mind literally is the source of all of our behavior and outcome, therefore. So if we can rewire their brain, we can have them do anything and everything automatically.
Yeah, and I've talked about you on this show, so I have some, I have a good following of people who are like going to be pumped that I have you on, because I've always mentioned I worked with a coach. I spent a ridiculous amount of money, and they've seen this ascension. I know that a lot of listeners have watched me on social and have kind of witnessed this rapid ascension of what I've done, because I told you, right before I hired you, I literally took out a $20,000 loan. This was right before my 36th birthday. It was right around my 36th birthday, because I like, my wife always makes fun of me, not makes fun, but she always wonders like how a person can wake up so happy all the time. And I always wonder like, how can a person wake up grumpy? Right. And that's kind of our little thing. And it was right before my birthday. I've always been a guy who loved to celebrate birthdays. And my 36th birthday was different. I actually did a show on my 36th birthday, and I was pissed at myself because I was like, my business was like on the outside, it looked good, but there was so much stuff underneath, like that people didn't know that I was going through, and that I had this inner turmoil when it came to a lot of stuff financially. And I was like, I can't believe I'm in this situation. That like, I'm better than that. I have to figure this out. And I took out this loan from PayPal, $20K. And I was just pissed. I was just upset like that I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I think I met you or talked to you shortly after. It was probably June. It was probably a year ago. And I was like, man, like this is a lot of money to spend on my mindset. But I knew that when I had talked to you, I'm like, this is what I need, because I got the sense that it had nothing to do with skill level at that point. Like I had put in a decade of work. So yes, I could learn more stuff, but it had nothing to do with the amount of knowledge I had nothing to do with anything other than there was something that was blocking me from achieving what I really wanted. And there was a couple things that we can talk about, but long story short, I hired you. And the reason I hired you or even found out about you was I was diving into the world of NLP. And I want you to tell the listeners what that is in a second. But I had been to Tony Robbins coaching a couple seminars, and that was awesome. And then I would follow guys like Bob Proctor, who was a big part of The Secret. And I knew that there was this thing that was real about the law of attraction, but I couldn't put it together because I knew I just couldn't close my eyes and have a Lambo appear in my driveway. But I had this inner knowing that I needed somebody to help me just go in, rewire my brain. There were some things that I could fix. You were that person. So let's dive in there, because we're going to get into unconscious, conscious, goal setting, a lot of stuff. But the basis of what you teach, and it's not all of it by any means, but there's a foundational part that's NLP. Can you tell the listeners what that even means?
Yeah, definitely. So neuro-linguistic programming is definitely something we've studied and practiced and have taught. Now, in the world of NLP, there's a lot of people that identify themselves as NLP coach or NLP, whatever, trainer, practitioner. One thing that is different about us is we don't just stop at NLP, right? But we have continued to study different things. And so we are someone who happened to know NLP, which has a huge impact on our lives. And so as we began to do the work of coaching and training and use it with our clients, we found it to be one of the most impactful. And so we continue to use it. So this is where, let me explain what NLP is. So neuro stands for our neurology and our nervous system and our brain and all that. And linguistic is literally how we communicate the language, but it's beyond the language of our mouth. It's beyond the words and the tone. It's our physical body language. It's the intention within our mind. It's how we communicate. And some would even say, perhaps telepathically. Yeah, let me correct myself. And they were able to. I mean, have you ever experienced this where you talk to someone, and you're literally thinking, "Oh, I think I know what you're," and then you think. And then they say it. You think of something, they say it. You think of something, they say it. Now some may say, "Oh, that's a rare occurrence." But what if you could fine-tune your mind so that you can communicate in such a way that you begin to truly able to read what's going on? And I'm not saying some cool mystical experience that you're like literally, getting in sync with someone's brain frequency and knowing what they're thinking. I'm saying you can train your mind to such a point where not only can you understand language at a deeper level, but also understand and hear and or feel what's going on. What are they communicating? What's their body language telling you? At such a deep level that you're like, oh yeah, of course I know this is what they're thinking. So linguistics, that's the linguistics part. And then next, there's the programming, which is how do you predictably change behavior and outcome through the usage of linguistics and how it influences our neurology. So to explain what NLP is really simply is how do you use your communication to alter the outcome through the change of unconscious behavior.
Yeah, incredible. And I knew that like at the basis of Tony Robbins' teaching, that's where I have ever heard of NLP in the first place. But I was so interested in our first conversation when you literally described what you described earlier about what you do. And that's, I have the ability to reprogram a person's behavior to get a result easier. And to me, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense, right? Because I always say like, we know inherently, or some of us do, most of you listening can wrap your head around the fact that we are what we do, right? Where if we have these habits and behaviors that we do over and over and over again, and you can get into, how much of that is unconscious versus actual conscious awareness, we have these habits or behaviors, and that's going to yield the result where we are right now, right? What I've done in the past has gotten me right here, but it seems like in fitness and finance, we have these behaviors that we consciously know are taking us further away from the goal, whether that's spending all of our money or going into debt or buying dumb stuff, or eating the cupcake and the donut and the pizza, where you know what your goal is, but you can't stop yourself from making these bad choices. And what you told me on day one was, we want to automate the behavior that it's going to take to get the actual results. So can you go into detail about how a person can do that? Because they're probably listening going, yeah, I shouldn't grab that cookie, or I shouldn't go on Amazon and buy all this stuff when I have other goals. How do we change that behavior?
Yeah, excellent question. So a couple of things first. One is most people don't know what they want. So it's hard to automate someone or someone's behavior if they don't know what they want. Because think about it. Like if you were to imagine that you're like a ship on the ocean, and if you don't know what your final destination is, it's hard to automate the journey. It's literally just drifting by the wind, right? So it's just going wherever it goes. So people that have no goals that are highly motivating naturally, they tend to have a hard time automating their life. So when you begin to find extremely compelling goals and have them written down, have them, embedded into your environment, so you're oftentimes reminded by it, getting to a point where you are absolutely, some would even say obsessed. You don't have to be. You can be calmly obsessed, right? Not like the popular, perception of what obsessions look like. You could be obsessed, but calmly, a calm confidence about what you're interested or what you want. As you understand what you really want and have lots of them, what I would even recommend is write down like 50 to 100 things or beyond that you want. Now, we're not promoting that idea of you have to be materialistic. That's not what we're saying. But physical things that are tangible are really nice and measurable. And wouldn't it be great that you could increase your financial capabilities so that you can have those things, or somehow those things appear in your life? That would be good. So as you consider that, now let me give you an example. It's not mindlessly writing down some stuff that you think you should want, or other people think you should want, or that you think would be good to have. It's something that you're like, wow, I haven't even let myself want this thing, but I really want it so badly. Or this is something I've wanted since my childhood, or this is something that really brings me great joy. And exploring and going on a journey to seek out what you really want in the physical, and that creating that sense of wanting and desire will drive your unconscious, because your unconscious mind wants to have these experiences of having these things, or simply they could be experiences. So as you have them written down, then you'll find yourself naturally feeling more compelled. That automation will happen quite naturally. Now, of course, there are some other specific steps that we can talk about, but that's the basic foundation of how you create automation within your behavior so that you can naturally have what you want and create the behavior that works out at the end.
Dude, and I mean, it's so funny. Like sometimes something seems so simple. And I can't even tell you, like, if in my whole closet is not clothes in this office, it's books. And so books like The Secret and books that talk about this stuff, right? And a lot of times these books, like, or even Think and Grow Rich, I probably read it 4 times, but the depth of some of the stuff that you just said, and creating this desire and knowing what you want, is stuff that I've heard over and over and over again. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I know what I want. Right? I know what I want. I got you. But it wasn't until I worked with you specifically that one thing was worth all the money that I spent with you, because it was like I finally understood and then could see it. And I've done this in my own life, like with fitness. I know why I want to be fit. I have this look that I'm like, I want to be strong. I want to be powerful. I want my body to have it like just represent me on the top level possible every time I meet somebody. And so for me, I've said this multiple times. My desire for that is so great that another person on the outside might think that, oh, John's so disciplined. He works out 5 times a week. And, it doesn't matter if it's 5 a.m. or midnight, he's going to get that workout in. And I look at them and I'm like, it's not that I'm disciplined at all, really. It's that I want this thing, this fitness in my life so bad that I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes. And it's stuff that whether I want to work out or not work out is irrelevant. And coaching people, I really want to ask your opinion on this. Coaching people in fitness, I found that if they just say, if I ask them why they want to get fit in the first place, do you want a six pack? Do you want to lose 50 pounds? I find that the people who struggle the most are in this category of they're okay. It's almost like they don't have 50 pounds to lose, but they definitely don't look like a Spartan either. And so they join thinking that they might want a little bit better fitness, but it's like they can't tap into this immense desire to get them to change the behavior. So no matter what they do, they can follow a plan for 6 weeks, but it always rewinds. Have you ever, is that a normal thing? Like, how does a person tap into the desire if they don't truly know why they want in the fitness realm, if they don't truly know why they want to get more healthy or look a certain way?
It's typically unconscious. So oftentimes I run into people that don't know what they want. And even when given the opportunity, let's say this, right? Let's say our listeners are given $1 million today out of the blue. Tax already taken out. It's $1 million in the bank. What are they going to do differently? Now, here's the trick, though. That $1 million is going to be taken away if they don't spend it by midnight.
Mm.
What are they going to do with it, right? And what are you going to do with it? So that changes things. People think that they're okay because they don't realize the consequences of not improving. We're hardwired and programmed at the deepest of our unconscious to progress and grow. So if they're just like okay, they're at a point of evolution where they're like, I'm okay, but something is coming. They have no idea, right? So it's something we talk about in training, right? People experience something called the point A, B, C, D. At point A, things fine. They're going all right. Yeah. And it's not like people are, thinking life is okay. They're at that point where life is okay. Or fitness is okay. Mm-hmm. And then they experience point B. They get to a point where they're like, I'm kind of tired of where I'm at. I'm not really experiencing the growth that I wish I could have. Right. And, or they're feeling bored or whatever. They're like, I need to go to the next level. Then there's point C. They're like, because they haven't made any moves. They haven't made any changes, and they've let it drag out too long. They procrastinated. And then they experience point C, which is the low dip in that journey. And it's the part where in their journey, they're feeling a lot of pain. And that a lot of pain can drive people out of it, right? Or some people will go into a loop until they find you, right? Or they find us in a scenario where they could just grow past that. So then there's point D, where they're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to change. And that's typically when people experience the breakthrough. Yeah. Or at least in between C and D. So when people find you, depending on at what point, if it's point A, B, C, or D, you're going to have a different conversation.
Right. Yeah. And I learned that in your training. Before that, it's almost like if a person's in so much pain, the way I see it, a person can be motivated to get away from something, or a person can be motivated to get a reward, right? Almost a toward or away from. And people do really well in the beginning if they look in the mirror and they're like, I'm so sick of this. Like, this image is not me. And it's so painful to them, or their doctor says they need to change, and it catapults them into this like really fast result. And then there's always this lag where it's like, okay, now what? The pain's not enough to motivate me anymore. And I think for my own life, like the being motivated to not fail got me so far. And I didn't know how to switch that in my brain to, at a certain point, be motivated to see how great I could be. And that's like a mistake that I refuse to make, and one that you've helped me break through. And I think when people come into my fitness program, the guys who really, really crush it, they're watching me really help them tap into this vision of what they might possibly be. And to be quite simple with it, it's really creating that immense desire to where now they just make the right choices.
Yeah. If I may add something too, this is oftentimes something people don't know, is when they're okay, right? Things are okay, and they don't have that massive desire because of pain or toward, the pleasure. They're just okay is actually the perfect opportunity for them to take action because they could avoid all the pain. They could avoid all the pain because so many of us in this world are doing fine, yeah, in certain areas of our lives. Yeah. I mean, have you ever met someone that they're doing fine financially and you're like, hey, would you want to make more? They're like, no, I'm fine. Right? That complacency actually is in conflict with the natural hardwired program in their brain that says you are here to grow, which then causes that point C that we mentioned earlier. So you can avoid point C and all the pain if you will consciously decide that even if it's totally comfortable, that you're going to make it uncomfortable for yourself and create that massive desire and go for the next level. That will save that human probably decades of time.
Incredible. It's so powerful and so important at the same time. One of the things I think you're a master of language, of hypnotic language, which, that might be a topic for another day. But what about, I mean, we're all human beings and we all are viewing the world from our own different lenses based on our beliefs and memories and what we were told. And we're like these walking stories, right? Stories of why I can't or why I can. And these stories are belief systems. And so a person might call them limiting beliefs. Like they might not see them. That might be in their, their blind spot, which I had some of those, or they might be aware of them where they know that they might be, they have these limiting beliefs about money or fitness. Your expertise is like breaking someone through. Can you, this is a tough question. What's a step? Like if a person is, let's just say a person is so afraid to fail, right? And they're just like, man, I'm really afraid to fail. What would be some steps that you would actually, let's not go there. What if a person doesn't feel like they deserve success? Because this is something that I think a lot of people are like, inside they might believe that because whatever they did in the past, they might not believe that they deserve ultimate success.
So quickly addressing what you said before, although you said we could address it later, what if they fail to fail? What would that mean? They would succeed, right?
Right.
So if they just fail to fail, embracing that failure of failure, they could succeed.
This is like the Matrix language, right? You'd ask me these questions and my brain would like trip out for a minute and be like, whoa, wait a minute. I gotta rewind that. But that's interesting because let's say a person is like, I'm just not confident. I'm not confident. And you were like, and you would ask them, well, how confident are you that you're not confident? They're like, I'm confident. So what you're really saying is confidence is an act almost. Like you're either acting confident or not acting confident. So in a certain sense, if you're so confident that you're not confident, you already know how to be confident. So how do we bring that knowing in other areas? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. I mean, even if people say, I don't know how to succeed, they're doing the act of not knowing how to succeed.
Yeah, dude, this is where when I took your training and talked to you, I was like, whoa, like I'm in the Matrix right now. Cause now after going through your trainings and going through this, like understanding a person's language and how they speak, I talk to people all the time on sales calls, or I talk to my own clients, and it's like, they'll say something and I'm like, oh, there's a limiting belief there. And a lot of times it's as simple for me as a coach and having this understanding, and what you've done for me is like a simple reframe. Like I'll ask a question and it'll be very apparent to them that their story was kind of ridiculous. And for whatever reason, it was stuck inside of them for how many years, right?
Exactly. So the story of how much we deserve is a story that we made up, or someone made up and we accepted. So the real question is, how did they come about that story, right? And one way to ask that question isn't specifically like, how did you come up with that, number that you deserve only this much? But of course you could. You could actually consider this. You can ask them, according to whom do you only deserve this, right? I mean, now most people probably would not straight up tell you, I don't feel like I deserve that, right? They'll act in a certain way and you'll notice that they're like, oh, wow, this person doesn't actually believe they deserve this, right? Have you ever met someone, they applied to college and they're like, I'm not sure if I can get in. And it has nothing to do with their scores and or extracurriculum, activities. It's the, how much do they believe they could get in, right? They may be thinking, well, what if I don't deserve this? Now, you may have experienced that when you apply for college. What about a job? Has anyone ever met someone or yourself apply for a job or a position and you're like, I'm not sure if I'll get it? Yeah. Now, these are actually all opportunities. You may say it's normal. People wonder that, right? Because sometimes people choose and the interviewer may have a bad day and they may choose someone else. But that's not the point. The point is, what is it that's going on in your mind? Because what's going on in your mind has a greater influence on your behavior and your state, which therefore has an influence on the person who you're talking, meeting with, which may actually cause you to be able to get in because of how they feel around you, right? So all of the chain reactions that we don't know, that are unconscious, all starts actually in our mind when we answer the question, how much do we really believe that we deserve? And keep this in mind. This is very specific. How much do we believe we deserve is different than how much do we deserve. Because if you were to ask me, how much does anyone on earth deserve? I'd say a whole lot, infinite amount of goodness, right? And positivity and abundance. But if you were to say, how much does that person believe they deserve? That is a different question. And so you ought to ask yourself, okay, how much do I believe I deserve? Because remember, you are a magnificent being who deserves all of it. If you don't feel that, that means you don't believe that, right? If you don't believe that, then there's something that you could actually resolve, which causes you to naturally have more. I've had so many clients that extremely skilled individuals, highly intelligent, very, very experienced in what they do. And yet, because in their mind, they didn't believe they could have what they want, that causes them to actually settle for less or have less than someone else who's no smarter than them.
And that's where self-sabotage comes in, yeah?
Yep.
Where I mean, I'll take myself, for example, and, talking about income levels, right? And it was like, yeah, I made more money than a lot of people, but like for my own standards, it was like not what I wanted, right? But I found myself just kind of like banging up against this outer, like almost boundary of no matter what I did, no matter what I switched up, it was like I always ended up right around the same $2,000 to $4,000 a month, where it was like, how does a person grow exponentially? And if a person is like, if they're in real estate or there's someone and they're like, man, I make, like, no matter what I do, good economy, bad economy, no matter what, I'm always making 200K a year or 100. Input your own number, but we're talking about somebody who really wants to succeed and maybe make $1 million, but no matter what they do, they're always like right around 200. Is that like a self-image issue? Is it a self-deserve issue sometimes? I mean, it could be a lot of things, but let's just say that they enhance their skill constantly. Maybe they never really truly think it's a mindset problem, but you and I know it's a mindset problem. Yeah?
Yes. So think of it like this, right? So in our mind, per second, we're experiencing about 12 million bits of information coming in, bombarding us. And we delete most of it down to about 126 bits of information per second. So no matter how skilled someone is, let's say let's say their profession's in computers, let's say their professions is in advertisement, it doesn't matter what, or in sales or in fitness or it doesn't matter how skilled you are if what you believe you deserve is only 100K or 50K or 200K or 500K, whatever that number is that you believe you deserve, you will, if that's the number, you will delete anything and all things that are in conflict with that number in your mind. and leave you with only 126 bits per second, 126 bits per second of things that are consistent with what you believe you deserve. Therefore, it has nothing to do with skills. It's about being able to change what actually goes through the filters, which is where the unconscious programming comes in.
Beautiful place, dude. So a lot of times I heard of unconscious, subconscious. Is there any, I mean, first of all, you say unconscious, some other people would say subconscious. Do you prefer one or the other?
So that's something that we call prepositions, and sub presupposes that they may be below. And so in our mind, in our model of the world, when we teach about the unconscious, we believe that the unconscious is everything else besides the conscious, everything that, within ourselves that we're not conscious of, whereas subconscious almost has a, inferior connotation. But really, in this day and age, most people that say subconscious don't actually think that. So I think it's interchangeable.
Okay, so let's go there. Unconscious versus conscious. I've talked about this a little bit on this show, but I haven't taught it like at a deep level like you do. So let's talk about the unconscious and unconscious and conscious mind, and talk about how that's developed. Can you tell the listeners kind of the differences, what purpose each of the minds serve, and also how the unconscious is developed?
So develop in what sense?
Or I would say grow. Yeah.
Ah, got it. So let's think about this, right? When we were born, we were infinite, and the conscious unconscious congruent. They were one, and you didn't know the difference, frankly. And to step aside for a second, conscious unconscious is really a made up, divide, right? We made up that division so that we can easily talk about what's going on where. So really, at the end of the day, it's still one. However, something does happen along our lifetime where we begin to put up this boundary. So let me explain what that means. In the younger years of our lives, we oftentimes have these, we imagine things very vividly. Our imagination of, maybe for some people is, becoming an astronaut. Some people, they have, imaginary friends. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to be, I'm going to play in the NFL. Or different people are going to have different dreams or what they imagine in their mind. And as a child, typically, they imagine very vividly as if they're living, and have you met a child, maybe you experienced this yourself, you would talk to some imaginary friend and have a nice conversation. I remember I did that, right? But then came one day, my parents are like, that's not real. They're like, Santa's not real. And you're like, what? Right? And that moment, you realize what you imagine may not be real. Now, that creates a critical faculty which defines and oftentimes people believe that this is what caused the division between the conscious and conscious. Now, of course, there are many schools of thoughts, right? But this is one way for you to be able to tell what is actually real and what's not. And the division between the conscious and unconscious actually serves that purpose. So there are a lot of good things that come of it, right? So you can tell what's real and what's not necessarily real. Because when you go and watch, let's say, a superhero movie, you don't want to walk out of the theater thinking, oh, that just happened for real. That was the news, right? And now, of course, I can't tell you that kind of stuff, that superhuman capabilities does not exist. I can't tell you that, but you get my point here. So back to the unconscious and how you can grow it, right? So in order for you to grow, really, you want to grow both minds. You want to grow both minds, but to simply put it, you want your unconscious to become more conscious of itself. You want the unknown to become known. And at first, it's by the conscious mind literally illuminating the unconscious, showing the unconscious, oh, this is unconscious. So it's by knowing the things that you don't know or the things that you don't know, right? Because some of the things that we're talking about here, you don't know, right? And some of you may be like, oh, I already know most of these things or some of these things. And that's cool. Continue to explore and find things that you don't know or things that you don't know. And as you do that, you'll find what we just talked about earlier, right? Full circle. What's a breakthrough? A breakthrough is about actually breaking through the boundary of known limitations. What we think the world is, and that model that we have of the world, we think, oh, this is the boundary of the world. But as soon as you break through by knowing the things we don't know, or the things we don't know, what you'll find is that completely shatters the old model. And you find yourself naturally having an easy time achieving or doing the things that you used to think as an achievement. You used to think, oh, making $200, $500, or $1 million is an achievement. Now you naturally do so.
Right. It's kind of like, if you're used to making 10K in a month and then you make 10K in a day, it's like a paradigm shifting breakthrough where it's like, whoa, like you can never really go back. Right. But the unconscious. So what are some of the unconscious's jobs? So, start from the time we were in the womb. Tell the listeners like how that unconscious develops, from zero to however, and how, that can have major implications into some of the stories that we might have.
Cool. Yeah. So the unconscious mind, once again, right? We don't put a literal physical boundary on what the unconscious mind is. It's just whatever that we're not conscious of. So frankly, when we were in the womb, we were unconscious, right? How many of us fully remember consciously what we were doing and how it was like, what was happening outside, right? So frankly, we were this unconscious being growing. And all of the coding of basically executing how we grow and how we become bigger and grow into ready to come into the world type of an infant, essentially, right? All of that is done according to the unconscious program. So the unconscious mind does manage the growth and, frankly, all the functions of the body. But that's actually not something that I'm going to talk and focus on. What I want to focus on is actually what the unconscious mind does when it stores a belief, when it stores what's been told. See, how many people think, oh, the infants, the children, they don't understand. I can have an argument with my spouse, no problem, right? But how many of you notice that they, even pre-linguistic, can sense that negative energy, that negative emotion, and they get irritated? And over time, people, maybe the parents are totally ignorant of that. Over time, the child become less and less positive and more irritable. And the parents are like, I don't know why they won't go to sleep at night. Right? They'll say things, oh man, that child of mine is crazy. Right? Have you ever heard a parent say that? Well, that's not something you want to say, first of all, because that's programming, guys. The words we use, especially to the little children, right? 0 to 7, what is going on there? They're literally little unconscious mind. And at some point they're able to walk, right? Crawl and walk. And then some point they're able to run. But they are little unconscious minds, extremely suggestible. So if you're like, that child has, anger issues. Wow. If they accept that in the unconscious level, you've just done something that's not actually good for them, right? Now, you may say, crap, I did that. What do I do now? That's actually, there's good news for you. You can learn how to unprogram that, right? Uninstall that. And it's going to take some skills. It's going to take some learning, perhaps some trainings too, right? You're going to want to be able to begin to talk to them differently. And it doesn't matter how old they are. All humans can be programmed. It's a do-with process here that we're talking about. You can speak with them. Think of it like this. This is the governing principle. It's the words we use does not describe, but it defines the very next moment. And if you use the words that you want to use that are fully aligned with the reality that you want, such as describing a child or defining, right? You would say words like, oh, you're so healthy and strong, full of such good emotions. If you repeat that throughout the course of their life, well into their teenage years, all the way into their adulthood, they will literally be programmed, right? And of course, it's still a choice. They have to accept it in order to actualize it. But who doesn't want to be told that they're awesome, that they're amazing, they're precious, they're incredible, they're smart, they're kind, they're beautiful, handsome, all that good stuff, right? And of course, some of you may say, hey, if I tell that to my child, they're somewhat resistant to these good things. Well, think about the way you're saying it, yeah? So making sure you're not making the mistake of don't think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. Because what do you think about, right? So the human mind doesn't like to negate things. So if you tell them, hey, you're not stupid, what are they thinking? They're thinking I'm stupid. Right? So remember, your language is defining the very next moment. And if you've defined all the moments in the past in not so positive ways, you've got some time to make up. Now, this is not about parenting. This is about you, right? This is about you. What have you experienced? You can't blame your parents. Now you know what happens to the mind. You have full control over your own unconscious mind. So you can actually begin to talk to yourself. I know we use the analogy of parents and children, but the relationship between the conscious and unconscious is literally like a parent to a child. How in the world are you talking to your own inner child, your own unconscious? Right? Are you saying mean things when you get up? You're like, oh, I look like shit, right? Or do you say, oh, I am freaking awesome. I look amazing. What are you saying to yourself, right? And it's not just saying, you got to believe it. Right? Because I'm not saying, hey, get up in the morning and say, I'm totally confident, I feel good, I'm successful, I make a lot of money. Not like that, right? You got to believe it. It's got to be congruent. Because think about it. Do you get up in the morning and say, I breathe, I eat food and digest and I go poop? You don't, right? You don't, because it's natural. So you want to actually get to a point where you fully believe. And if you need to do self-affirmation, if you need to do hypnosis, if you need to do NLP, if you need to do whatever, you do what you do to a point where the parenting from your conscious mind to your unconscious is fully congruent. And then this is where magic begins. If I may continue, I'll say this one more thing. I will say this. If you get to a point where your child grow up to an adult, the unconscious is capable of so much. And I frankly, we can't even put a number on it. Some would attempt to say it can do 1,000,000 times 1,000,000,000 calculation per second. It's magnificent. It's like a quantum supercomputer. Some may say that, yeah? I don't know. I can't put a number on it because it's practically infinite in terms of capability. So what I will say is, if you train your child, your unconscious, yeah, really well, and it obeys you because it wants to, you will get to a point where literally other elements will obey you as well.
Amazing. I mean, I think that was the allure of working with you in the first place. Was I knew to a point, like, I would say words are powerful, right? And I had been on a journey long enough to think that, but then it wasn't until I started working with you when I realized that I was saying some very disempowering things, although I consider myself very positive and whatnot. But it's been said that and you're a master hypnotist, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this programming, that's basically what hypnotism, I think when I think of a hypnotist, it was like a stage show that I saw when I was in, grade school or junior high. We'd go to a funny show and they'd make people do crazy stuff. And my sister got hypnotized one time and she, was acting like she was Britney Spears on the stage, and she literally came out of it. She's like, what in the heck? Right? She was doing it. It was crazy. But basically, words are so powerful, and people are embedding suggestions just like a hypnotist would. If you're a child, your parents are telling you things, and we can think of this almost like we're being programmed, whether the parents know it or not, and it has profound impact on us. But what you're also saying, and what I've heard lately, is that if somebody has X amount of influence on us based on what they say, we have 10 times the influence on ourselves based on what we're saying to ourselves.
Definitely. We are all hypnotists, whether we know it or not. What separates someone who's highly trained versus someone who's not is literally how conscious are we about the things we say. Because regardless if we like it or not, what we say to ourselves is having an influence in a hypnotic way, programming ourselves, right? So when you get into a place where you're, I mean, like for example, John, you are highly trained now too, right? And being highly trained in hypnotism and the science behind how you communicate with the mind and how it can be programmed, that allows all of us, especially someone like yourself who is already a high performer, to be able to speak to yourself not only kindly, but precisely, so that you can get the outcome you want. And that's it. It's about you. And I think of it like this too. Instead of parents and child, you can also think of it as captain and crew. The captain needs to be able to speak to the crew, and the crew will do the work. Too many of us are like, how can I push and push and push to get the outcome I want? But they forgot they're the captain. The captain shouldn't be cleaning the toilets. The captain shouldn't be cooking meals for everyone. The captain shouldn't be refueling. The captain is there to make decisions on where to go, what directions they go, and what they want. People don't remember that or never knew that, right? So as you realize this, what you'll find is you step into the role of the captain and you train your crew well, treat them as if they're your own children. Magic will happen.
Another analogy that I like is almost like autopilot, right? On cruise ships or planes, for example. Once that pilot has it or the captain has it going, he's not really flying or directing. He put the coordinates in and that ship and plane is going. And this is what I found to be the most powerful thing. And the word that I've used to people when like I've gotten comments on the show and the podcast is kind of ascending, or they see like some of my stuff and they're like, John, I've followed you for a long time. You just seem to be like operating on this different level. And I am. And it's literally because of you, but it's because of this one thing. I feel alignment. For the first time in my life, I feel so aligned and congruent that I can put this goal in as like coordinates. And then the captain can just go take a seat, grab a Coke, and it's like that ship is on a straight path to the coordinates. It can be windy. It can have like 10-foot ocean swells sometimes. And it's just cutting through it. No matter what, it's like I put the coordinates in, type them in, and I'm there, right? And this alignment is something that if I'm conversating with my clients or I'm conversating with a neighbor or somebody's telling me a story, I see the incongruence jump out almost immediately, right? It's like if any of you guys have ever felt like there's a part of you who wants something and a part of you who doesn't want that same thing, or there's this disalignment in what you think you want and what you actually want, and it holds you back, it's the most amazing feeling in the world to bring that into alignment. And the breakthrough stuff that I've done with you, the most impactful things that I've done with you, number one was parts integration, which we can talk a tiny bit about. It's hard to explain, but that's something that they would need to go through your training, where like that, there's no amount of money that wasn't worth that, right? Because if you're walking around and you're thinking about, man, sometimes I talk about like a part of me wants this and a part of me feels this way. And there's that incongruence and I did not know how to fix it. When that was aligned, it was like a rocket ship took off. It's like, whoa, now I'm in alignment. And I did it in the master training, another exercise, which the breakthrough was so profound, not difficult, but I'm going through this training and I realized that this one thing was like, I found it. And it was like, oh my God, like if I resolve this one thing, I'm going to ascend. And same thing. It was like, as soon as I resolved it, the craziest stuff started happening. And it was like, those coordinates were in and my life was now what we call automation, where I had these goals. And before it was like, I was swimming as fast as I could upstream. And it was like, sometimes I felt like I was drowning and it was like, just work. And now this like seamless effortlessness is like just taking me to my coordinates. So can you talk about maybe the parts thing where a person feels, like they know they're listening right now and they're like, dude, I know what they're talking about. I feel incongruent. Like, what can I do?
Yeah, there are actually two parts to this.
Okay, awesome.
So part one is actually, it's literally about the parts. So at some point in our life, if we find ourselves feeling incongruent, we're having a label about something, and the label, oh, this is what I want. Oh, and that's what I want. And you find yourself feeling conflicted inside. And you already spent enough time talking about what that feels like. That incongruency can be sensed from a mile away, right? And that oftentimes, the part itself almost has its own like personality, its own outcome and goals. So that causes self-sabotage, like big time, right? But in order to fully address this, I need to address the second part that I was wanting to talk about. The second part is this. People don't realize the vehicle that they use to go and achieve their goals. And you can actually look at it this way, right? So when you, for example, playing football, right? Being fit, being at your prime state physically absolutely helps. Absolutely helps, right? You're going to win a lot more when you're at your prime state. Now, if you're going to, let's say you and I are going on a journey, right? Like when I was getting here, like it's slightly stormy today, right? I was riding my motorcycle here, and then I realized it was too windy, and I was wanting to turn around, and the roads were blocked. Now, think about that. And then I was like, okay, this is not prime condition for a motorcycle. The journey would be slightly more difficult. Now, you could also think about it like this, right? How many of us are riding a motorcycle in the storm to get to our destination because we didn't give ourselves the best vehicle? Whether it's physically, because we didn't train. Train with John, right? You guys will, for those of you who are already training with John, you know what it's all about, because your physical vehicle is literally elevating. You're getting like a spaceship, right? And for those of you who are like, hey man, I'm training with John and I want to elevate more. Your mind is the other vehicle that oftentimes are neglected. So I went home and I jumped in my Tesla and drove here. And it was super aerodynamic. It was easy. Like the storm, I didn't even feel like anything happened outside. All of a sudden I'm here. And it was easy and effortless. And my car was fully charged too, right? I fully charged it the night before. So begin to think about, when we go about life, are we taking care of the two most important vehicles, our body and our mind? If there is a part, like our body's doing well and our mind's not, there's going to be an ultimate incongruence. So when we are congruent on both, you guys, John is a great example of congruency, right? How well is he taking care of his body? Obviously, he's a great example. And his mind, great example. That's why it's easy, and it's going to continue to get easier and easier and easier for John to achieve whatever he wants. From now, it's just he decides what he wants. That's all that really he needs to do, because his body and mind are aligned. So I would encourage, for those of you who are all listening, if you want ultimate alignment, begin to think, what's going on in my mind? Is it aligned with my body? Is it aligned with my survival and thrive? Will it help me thrive in my life? Right? And is it aligned with what I want? I'll say this last thing too. How many of us, this is a different dimension when you think about incongruency. How many of you say, I want this? Maybe you go to a restaurant and you're like, oh, I want this one plate. But you end up ordering something else because this month is a little tight. Maybe you made an investment that's kind of big and you're like, I'm just going to buy something cheaper, like $1 cheaper, whatever, right? And or like you're looking for a car and you're like, I really want this car. But then you're like, well, but I don't need that. I could just do this one. Yeah. So, but here's the thing, right? It depends on how important that is to you. Maybe those things are not important to you, then it's not a big deal at all, right? Because if you go to Costco and you're like, oh, that toilet paper is nice, I want that one, but it's $1 more, who cares? That doesn't matter. But if it comes to something that truly matters to you, like maybe your fitness goal, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna let myself settle, yeah, and or like maybe it comes to your income goal or something else, yeah, and of course other small things too do matter. And you're like, instead of getting the ultimate, this is what I want, I continue to train myself to get what I need. Next time you say what you want and you really want it, your mind is going to ignore you because it's incongruent about it. It's going to be like, well, last time you just went for what you need and what you will settle for. I'm not going to give you what you want. That's also incongruency. So train yourself to be congruent with what you want over time, and you'll find yourself having an easy time automating everything you want.
That's speaking to me. I'm deciding between the Maserati and the Porsche as you're talking. And one of them is like, and the other one's like, it's a little on the steeper price range. So dude, I love that, man. And I could talk about that all day, but I mean, guys, we're getting to about an hour. I literally could talk to Will for 10 hours because the one thing that I want you guys to take away today is that I look at you and I look at all the people that you work with, and there's not a single person, and I've referred you a lot of people because I mean, you changed my life. My life has been on this ascension that's not linear, right? People like you think you need linear, like baby step growth. I think of it, when I took your training, it was a paradigm shift. And that's a really great way to change. When I had one reality and I came out of your training 7 days later and my world was different. My worldview was different on money, on fitness. And like, I was always like, I could grind my way in fitness and I liked it. And it was something that was pretty natural to me. But at 37 years old now, like, I'm in better shape than I've ever been in my entire life. I continue to just dial it in easier and better and more, right? And so I had this paradigm shift, and it's been not a linear, like, just stair step. It's been like an explosion. And every single person that I've been like, if they've asked me like, John, this or that, and I'm like, you got to go talk to Will. I get these texts and I get these messages, and it's like their life's changed. And it's like their income is, I call you like the income expert, because if it's here, it's like, just wait like 1 or 2 months. It's like it's a different reality. So you are a true master. And when I talk about people, like, some people start businesses and everyone's got to start somewhere, right? Like, I'm an expert master when it comes to that physiology and the body. Like, I have no problem saying that because that's been my life's work. Mindset wise, I have a lot of experience in my own life achieving things, and I always thought that I was like, I'm a pretty good mindset. I played in the NFL. Like, what? Like, I just need the tactic. I need the strategy. I need the right whatever. And I would keep getting the tactic and the strategy, and the income level will never change until I went through the training. And I was like, I worked on my mindset really, and not just like the mindset that people like to throw around, but deprogramming limiting beliefs, reprogramming new beliefs, and focusing relentlessly on actually achieving goals, not just writing them down and wondering why they never happen. That rewiring of the brain had impact that I can't even really articulate on this show. So if a person's driving or working out or walking right now and they're listening and they're like, man, I have these incongruent parts. I'm not in alignment. I'm constantly talking shit to myself because I say I want one thing and I never get it, but I know I'm so much capable. I have so much more capability, and I want to tap into this limitlessness. Where can they find you?
So this is actually a perfect time for us to talk about this, because we're at the point where there's a lot of people coming to us, and we have more clients and students than we have time. And it's a really good thing, right? I mean, it's not even a problem. It's a really good thing. And we're beginning to hire coaches to handle all of the phone calls and inquiries. And yet we're at this perfect time where if anyone actually is interested in taking their life to the whole new level that they have always deserved, right? They can actually utilize the link that we'll include and actually directly schedule something with me. Because in the past, and even especially in the future, we're not going to be available. I'm not going to be available to talk to you directly. So there's a certain time period, a window of opportunity where you can schedule something. And I'm not going to say that I have a ton of time on my schedule, but I'd be happy to help, because I know the people who listen to John, they're high performers, right? I mean, you guys really get it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this. So if you find yourself really wanting to achieve that next level, and you're like, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes because the outcome is worth whatever it takes. Because think about, really, if you really believe where you're at is what you deserve, then please don't call me, right? If you believe that there's a lot more about you than what you have experienced, what you've seen, what you've heard, and then and what other people have told you about you, you believe there's a lot more inside of you, call me. I will help you experience your own magnificence at the fullest level. So schedule it. It's going to be a Zoom call. It's going to be a short call, but we'll see and we'll talk with you and we'll help you explore how we can work together. Awesome.
I'll include that in the show notes, guys, his link. And if you have questions, hit me up on Instagram, John Madsen Official. You can DM me if for whatever reason you can't find that link, and I'll get you in touch. But just like William said, if you feel like you've already achieved everything that you were put here for, that's not a phone call that you're going to take. But if any part of you knows that there's more for you and you want to know what that feels like and ascend, not in baby steps, but just ridiculous ascension, definitely hit that calendar and you'll make some available times for my listeners. And we'll have to do part 2 and part 3 on this. We're doing some awesome stuff together with some programs that are going to fully integrate mindset and body and take people to the most ridiculous level. And I can't be more excited than that. But Wiliam Lam, you are a mentor, a friend, and a master. Thank you for being here. And guys, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode of The Show with John Madsen. The greatest compliment that you could give us is liking, loving, and sharing this episode with all of your friends. So please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review, and then share it online with everyone that you know. Make sure to tag John as well. He loves to hear from listeners of the show. The links for all of his socials and iTunes are in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to engage John for anything related to his coaching, consulting, or programs, please visit johnmadsen.com for everything you'd need to know on how to engage with John offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Show.